Hello, and welcome to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'm your host, Yolanda Lewis, District Court Administrator for the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. This program is dedicated to providing you with resources, information, and a closer look at how our justice system works for you. Today's show is the last of a three-part series on alternatives to incarceration here in Fulton County. During the last episode, we discussed Fulton County's pretrial services program, new pilot programs in the District Attorney Paul Howard's office, and juvenile justice strategies that are critical to Fulton County and to Georgia. This segment will focus on state and local efforts by leaders of both the executive and judicial branches of government. In a recent article, Governor Nathan Deal highlighted the fact that we have an amazing opportunity to save lives as well as tax dollars by promoting recovery and rehabilitation versus simply hardening criminals. This is precisely the reason why we have decided to give you an inside look at how alternative programs work and the opportunity to hear from the policymakers who support this shift in thinking in the criminal justice system. Up next, we'll talk to Georgia's Chief Justice, Carol W. Hunstein. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulton Justice. Over the last year, Fulton County and Georgia residents have been increasingly more familiar with alternative sentencing programs here in Georgia. Today, joining us is the Chief Justice of Georgia Supreme Court, Justice Carol W. Hunstein. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Justice Hunstein, we've talked a lot over the years about our population, our prison population. What has contributed to our increasing population in prison?
We have been, in Georgia, very tough on crime. Mm-hmm. That does not necessarily mean we've been smart on crime. Georgia spends over $1 billion a year in incarceration costs for those who have committed offenses. What we have discovered is that it is not necessarily the best alternative for low risk or medium risk offenders. Mm-hmm. Once you put someone in the prison system, they are more likely to commit other crimes. The recidivism rate is about 30% within 3 years of release. That is not a good statistic, and it does not keep the public safe.
We're talking about recidivism, and a lot of people believe that we should be hard on crime. What are we doing to to address the challenge of prison populations?
We have come up with alternatives to the prison system that hopefully will address the root cause of crimes. The court systems, I think, have been very creative, not only in the state of Georgia, but across the United States, to come up with alternatives to incarceration. There are felony drug courts, mm-hmm. there are DUI courts, there are veterans courts, mm-hmm. There are mental health courts mm-hmm. that hopefully will address what the problem is that's causing this person to commit the crimes in the first place. A lot of the public mm-hmm. Has addiction problems.
Absolutely.
Real addiction problems.
Absolutely.
And putting them in the prison system does not address mm-hmm. their addiction. They go in an addict and they come out an addict, mm-hmm. and so they are going to commit other crimes. These alternative courts help them to address their problems, mm-hmm. and they're tough. Yeah. They are not easy to successfully complete. You are talking about having to come to court at least once a week mm-hmm. to have treatment, to address your problems, mm-hmm. and hopefully be successful. Mm-hmm. You're required to have a job, you're required to support your children. These are all good things. Mm-hmm. And in the long run, if we can keep these offenders mm-hmm. from committing other crimes, then I think the public is better off for it. What we have done is to make them self-supporting, right. contributing citizens of their community, and that's an important goal.
Now I want to come back to accountability courts and talk about how Georgians and why Georgians should support that. But you were recently on a special counsel for the governor.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that counsel and the work, your role?
Yes. The legislature created a special counsel on sentencing reform through legislation. They appointed a certain number of people who were to participate. That work ended the beginning of the legislative session last year. The legislature, in response, passed certain legislation that will help accountability courts and other alternatives so that we can address the problems at the root. The governor, and this has been an effort by all three branches of government, both the legislature, the governor, and the judicial branch, to really take a look at what's working in the state of Georgia. How can we keep the public as safe as possible and yet reduce the amount of money we spend on incarceration? When you have 1 in 13 people under some form of correctional restraint in the state of Georgia, that includes probation, parole, and incarceration in both the state and the local jail system. That's a problem.
Yes. That's historic to have all three branches of government actually working on this issue, correct? I
agree.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's really historic, and I think hopefully we'll set an example for the three branches of government to continue to work together.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go back to accountability courts because you mentioned some of the requirements of accountability courts. I think it's important for Georgians, as we're making this shift, to know why they should support this alternative. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, these are programs, and it's not just in the state of Georgia and didn't start here, but it is throughout the nation. And these are courts that help someone who has been accused of a crime address, in general, their addiction problems, because there are a lot of addiction problems. And these court systems focus on demand. There is a lot of energy that is being focused on supply. The demand side has not that much attention has been paid to it. So this focuses on demand. It takes these people in to the court system, gives them the opportunity to address their addiction problems and to successfully complete a really long-term treatment plan that is supervised by a judge that will help them get to the point where they can graduate. And I've been to several of the graduations, and it really is remarkable. Not only the individual who has made the change, but it's the families who see the change.
Absolutely.
And it has an incredible impact on the families. It has an incredible impact on the children. I was recently out at the Cobb County Family Court Dependency graduation, and the room was full of children, and little children, and their parents were graduating from this drug treatment program. They had gotten their children back, they were being good parents, they were remaining drug-free, and they were employed and contributing to their community. That, I think, is very impressive.
It's magnificent. Justice, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you joining us.
You're very welcome.
When we return, we'll speak to the Deputy Counsel for the Office of the Governor, Nathan Dill, Mr. Thomas Worthy. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. Joining us now is Mr. Thomas Worthy, Deputy Executive Counsel from the Office of the Governor, Nathan Dill. He's going to provide additional perspective on alternatives to incarceration from the executive branch. Mr. Worthy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Now, we've talked a lot with the Chief Justice about the special counsel. Tell us a little bit about when the council was created and what it will focus on this year.
The council was created by the General Assembly in 2011. They passed a bill that the governor signed into law in March of 2011 that created the Special Counsel on Criminal Justice Reform. They met all through last session, developed recommendations and for addressing the adult prison population and alternatives to sentencing and accountability courts. They made those recommendations to the General Assembly, who created HB 1176, which was passed this most recent session in 2012. The governor signed that into law in April. The governor was so pleased with the work that was done by the special counsel, and we feel like it was such a monumental achievement that the governor has now extended the special counsel by executive order and has reappointed members of the special counsel who will begin, they have actually already begun meeting. The next meeting will be tomorrow, and they will be looking at further recommendations and oversight and accountability from last year's bill, and they will also be taking up the issue of juvenile justice and juvenile code rewrites.
A lot of work.
A lot of work, yes, ma'am.
Now, you mentioned House Bill 1176. I know for a lot of Georgians, House bills don't always, they're not familiar with them. So tell us a little bit about the sweeping changes that 1176
Sure,
made.
absolutely. HB 1176 completely revamped criminal justice in the state of Georgia. The goals of HB 1176 was providing accountability court services and other options to nonviolent offenders who have drug or mental health issues. They also focused on reserving the prison beds, which are very, very valuable, to the most serious offenders, and they did so by tweaking a little bit of theft and forgery thresholds. In addition to HB 1176, the governor requested and received $10 million in the budget for buttressing accountability courts around the state, as well as around $5 million for the Department of Corrections to retrofit some facilities to make them residential substance abuse treatment centers, which allows these folks that are nonviolent and have drug problems to really seek the treatment that they need in the community.
Now, you talked about having, reserving our prison beds for the most serious offenders. What's the benefit to the public of having that as our priority?
Well, study after study shows that if nonviolent offenders that have drug or mental health issues receive appropriate, highly supervised, community-based treatment, that the recidivism rate, the rate of which they reoffend and go back to prison, that rate plummets if they receive the proper treatment and strict supervision during that treatment. That makes our communities safer. If these folks are not reoffending and going back into prison, that makes our communities safer, and it saves us a lot of money. And prison beds are a finite resource. I mean, ultimately, there's only a set amount there, and those certainly need to be reserved for those violent and heinous offenders that cannot be rehabilitated through an accountability court, who are violent, or who do something so bad that they need to be locked up. And so it makes the community safer on two fronts. One, it reserves those beds for the people that need them. And two, it decreases the recidivism rate so that those are that do receive the treatment and excel at the treatment and are given the tools that they need to succeed do not reoffend, and the recidivism rate drops.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the Chief Justice talked about all three branches of government actually working on this issue. It's historic. Tell me a little bit about your role with the council.
Sure, absolutely. We are extremely fortunate to have all three branches of government working so closely together. The special counsel is made up of representatives from the executive branch, representatives from the legislative branch, representatives from the judicial branch, as well as sheriffs and other leaders in the field of law. And so the council makeup itself is unprecedented in how all three branches are working together. My specific role is I am kind of the interface between the governor's office and the council. I work with the Pew Research Center out of Washington, D.C., who are doing monumental efforts to help us with the data and some of the other data projections. And then I help facilitate the council's work and try to give the council anything that they need to do their job.
So Georgia, we know, has been very tough on crime over the years. Tell us why at this juncture citizens should actually support reform.
Well, the impacts of HB 1176 is that over the next 5 years, it averts prison growth, which was very scary about how our prison population was growing, and we were looking more and more like a California situation. And it's estimated that we're going to save the taxpayers $264 million. So without compromising public safety at all, actually, in my opinion, and in the governor's opinion, and in the legislature's opinion, actually strengthening public safety. So we still are being very tough on crime, but we are also now being smart on crime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great information.
Thank you.
When we return, we'll speak with Fulton County Chairman John Eaves. Stay tuned. Welcome back. With us now is Fulton County Commission Chair John Eaves, who has been an advocate for public safety, reducing recidivism, and taking a multi-level approach to the best use of county resources for alternative programs. Chairman, welcome to the program.
Yolanda, thanks so much for having me today.
Now, you have a very tough job. You are the chairman of the largest county in Georgia. Why do you now think that investing in alternatives is a good strategy?
Well, let me back up a little bit. I'm also a member of the National Association of Counties Justice Committee, and about 4 years ago I came across some very disconcerting statistics about criminal justice in the metropolitan Atlanta area. We actually have more people in our jail system than New York City. And then specifically in terms of Fulton County, we have a overwhelming number of African American males in our system. The justice area does great work, hard work, but can we do things in a more efficient manner? And more importantly, can we treat justice in a way that can be more effective in terms of addressing public safety, as you mentioned in your introduction, but more importantly, those who are involved in the criminal system, can we rehabilitate them so that they can't continue to revolve in the criminal justice system?
Now, the county has taken a very proactive approach to our jail overcrowding and incarceration in general. Talk to me a little bit about why Fulton County citizens should really start to pay attention to alternative sentencing.
On a lot of different levels. Number one, the cost factor. You know, it's just an inordinate amount of money that we pay towards the justice system. If you incarcerate someone in our jail, it's approximately $74 a day, and that over the course of a year is about $25,000 a year just to have somebody in our jail. And so from a cost standpoint, if we can look at ways that we can have people who are not in our jail, who are not a threat to our society, it's a lot more effective from a cost standpoint. But the other standpoint is, the bottom line is we want to make sure that we have safe communities. And so once a person gets involved in crime, we want to do what we can to make sure that he or she does not commit crime again. So I think that diversion programs, alternative sentencing, pairing individuals who are offenders or ex-offenders with services in the community so that we can address the issues that led to crime, those are the ways that we should go in terms of public safety and the cost factor.
So in the last budget session, we had a lot of discussions about alternative program and how the investment is really a good strategy for us at this point. Talk about historically, how has the county commission and you specifically supported alternatives to incarceration?
Well, as you pointed out, I'm an advocate of this issue in this area, but frankly, people preceded me also were concerned about it. And so accountability courts, investment in the drug court, DUI, mental health court, some of those things, those initiatives preceded me, and I certainly see the value of it, and I have provided my support in terms of the continuation of funding and make sure that those things happen. So a lot of it preceded me, but certainly since I've been at the helm as chairman, recognize the value and the importance of this, and so I've been doing all that I can in terms of supporting the system, the criminal justice system, the partners, in terms of having these alternative programs to support and address issues of recidivism, for example.
You often hear us in the news whenever something happened in Fulton, it makes the news. But I think the important thing that we need to talk about is that Fulton is the largest county, and so whatever we do, we try to make strides to kind of set the tone. Talk about what you will be doing and what the commission will be doing in the coming years to really make us a leader in alternative sentencing.
Well, I mean, it certainly is a great opportunity. Again, there are a high number of people go through our system. So, number one, what can we do to reduce the recidivism rate? Right now, the recidivism rate is around 80%, far too high. So can we develop some model programs to match up upon release from the jail with providers in the community so that the issues of mental health, issues of workforce development, issues of housing, issues of substance abuse can be addressed so that those individuals can have those issues dealt with so that they won't recidivate or get back into crime. So I think that there's an opportunity for some model programs to be developed so we can be a leader not only in the metro area but the state as well as the Southeast and the nation. I think that we are starting to go in the right direction in terms of putting an emphasis on the Second Chance Act program. We received a federal grant a couple years ago, one of only a few governments around the country to receive this multi-million-dollar grant. So we were already working with some high-risk offenders in our jail right now in terms of programs, in penal programs and services in the jail. I think that with some time in working out the kinks, we can have some model programs there. So I think that there's certainly a great opportunity for us to be a model, a leader in terms of the area, in terms of post-release programs and services, as well as in-penal programs and services that we can provide for offenders.
And one last question. I know citizens, we actually ask citizens to come volunteer to see what we do every day, as well as be involved in the system. Why do you think it's important, not only that the policymakers like yourself support this, but why should citizens get involved as well?
Well, actually, before I became chair, I had an experience with the criminal justice system. No, I didn't commit a crime, but certainly visited, people who I knew who were in the system. We all make mistakes, and so I certainly got a chance before I became an elected official to see what individuals went through and was a part of the rehabilitation process for those individuals. So I certainly encourage people to volunteer in terms of if they're in the ministry, being a chaplain, going and visiting people who are in the jail. That certainly is a way for you not only to learn but also provide support to those who are in the system. But I think that there are maybe some appropriate ways that you can reach out to commissioners, reach out to the justice partners, whether it's the court system, the sheriff's department, in terms of just lending your individual support and advocacy for what we're trying to do. The bottom line is we want to make sure that our communities are as safe as possible.
Absolutely.
And but the reality is those who do commit crime, we have to think about how we can deal with them in a more effective manner. The former locking up and throwing away the key does not work. We have to provide services and programs to rehabilitate those who commit crimes in our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman, so much for all your work, and thank you for being here today.
It's been my pleasure.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Over the last 3 episodes, we've discussed how Fulton County and state of Georgia policymakers are preserving public safety while taking a proactive approach to improving the lives of individuals in the justice system and strengthening our communities. The criminal justice system remains vigilant in addressing serious crimes and instituting innovative measures to protect citizens. What many leaders in the criminal justice community have come to know is that the traditional notion of locking people up and throwing away the key simply does not work. As a result, the justice system continues to integrate evidence-based practices that have proven to reduce recidivism while ensuring accountability. I hope that our discussions have given you a better understanding of accountability programs and alternatives to incarceration. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today, and thank you for tuning in to Fulton Justice. I'll see you next week.
one.